Okay, let's unpack this. Have you ever found yourself trying to follow complex instructions for something, well, really crucial, only to realize the key terms keep shifting?
Happens all the time, right?
Exactly. Maybe the same word means entirely different things depending on which page of the manual you're on, or worse, different words are used to describe the exact same component.
Yeah, like building IKEA furniture, but with constantly changing part names.
This is just frustrating. It can lead to, monumental errors, wasted effort, and ultimately something that just doesn't work.
Right, totally.
Things just fall apart.
Well, that kind of linguistic ambiguity, that shifting ground of terminology, that's a significant challenge facing one of the most exciting and rapidly evolving frontiers in medicine today: digital health and drug development.
It really is exploding, isn't it?
We're talking about revolutionary new technologies, from advanced wearables to sophisticated mobile apps, all designed to collect, well, unprecedented amounts of health data.
Data we've never had access to before, really. They hold immense promise for transforming how we measure patient outcomes in clinical trials. But the language we use to describe these innovations, specifically what we call a digital endpoint, hasn't quite kept pace.
Yeah, the tech is racing ahead of the vocabulary.
There's a real linguistic fog, and it's creating tangible roadblocks in getting these potentially life-changing therapies to patients. This deep dive is dedicated to cutting through that fog.
Okay.
And understanding why achieving precise, shared terminology isn't just, helpful, it's absolutely critical.
What's truly fascinating here, I think, is how foundational language truly is, especially in a scientific or technological field, and particularly one exploding with innovation like digital health.
Right, it's the bedrock.
Exactly. Our primary source material for this deep dive is a pivotal article published in Digital Biomarkers. It came out in January 2024, authored by Lanz, Northcott, Maloney, McCarthy, Dokuzova, Feaster, and their colleagues.
A significant group.
Very significant. This paper represents the collaborative efforts of the EFPIA, or Digital Endpoint Joint Subgroup. They're a major voice in this space.
Okay.
And they lay out a clear, compelling, and frankly, urgent case for harmonization, for getting everyone on the same page.
Harmonization of terms.
Yes. Their core mission, as they state in the paper, is to directly address the rampant confusion and inconsistency that plagues terms like digital measure, digital biomarker, and digital endpoint.
Those specific terms.
Those key terms, yeah. They are advocating for nothing less than a standardized lexicon, a universally accepted dictionary, basically.
So everyone knows what everyone else means.
Precisely. To ensure everyone involved, researchers, developers, regulators, healthcare providers, is unequivocally speaking the same language.
So if you're listening, why should you care about scientists and regulatory bodies quibbling over specific definitions?
It might sound academic, right?
It might. But this isn't just about obscure scientific jargon. It has direct, profound implications for all of us.
Absolutely.
Whether you're deeply curious about the latest health tech, or maybe someone who might benefit from new digital therapies in the future, or perhaps you work in an adjacent field and just appreciate the clarity that drives efficiency. Understanding this linguistic groundwork is absolutely key.
It really is. It connects directly to real-world outcomes.
It directly influences how quickly and safely groundbreaking new treatments can reach patients. It impacts the quality and trustworthiness of the evidence supporting those treatments.
And public confidence, too.
And ultimately, yes, it affects the public's confidence and trust in these innovative digital health solutions. Without that shared understanding, the entire drug development process becomes slower, far more expensive, and inherently carries greater risks.
Which impacts everyone involved, you're right, especially patients waiting for those treatments.
When we talk about the landscape of digital health right now, it truly feels like a new frontier. A bit like the Wild West,
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
But instead of gold rushes, we're witnessing an unprecedented data rush. Digital endpoints are not just advancing, they're, exploding onto the scene at breakneck speed.
The pace is incredible.
They're promising incredible new ways to measure health outcomes that were previously impossible to quantify objectively or continuously.
Think about things like continuous glucose monitoring.
Exactly. A revolution in diabetes management, enabling real-time insights into blood sugar fluctuations. Or consider activity tracking in wearables.
Right, being used now in trials for Parkinson's, for example.
Yes. To objectively assess mobility and symptom progression in neurological conditions like Parkinson's disease, we're seeing a sheer volume of new devices, incredibly sophisticated wearables, innovative software apps emerging daily.
All collecting this intricate, real-time, real-world health data.
Data that was historically elusive or maybe only gathered intermittently in a clinic setting?
Exactly. Data you couldn't get before.
This rapid proliferation of technology and novel data collection methods is precisely why clarity and a common understanding of terms are not just desirable,
but urgently needed. You said it.
Everyone is innovating at light speed, pushing boundaries, but unfortunately, they aren't necessarily using the same map or the same compass.
Or even the same language to describe their discoveries.
Yeah.
This creates a cacophony, not a symphony, in the scientific conversation.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, this rapid evolution is undoubtedly a massive benefit for healthcare. Huge potential.
Oh, absolutely. Revolutionize patient care research.
But the paper from the EFPIA subgroup powerfully illustrates that without that shared dictionary, this innovation creates real and significant roadblocks at every single stage.
Every stage.
Every stage of digital endpoint development and deployment. The article highlights exactly how this inconsistency manifests, making it painstakingly clear this isn't just theoretical.
Okay, so how does it actually play out? Well, for instance, different stakeholders, and by that we mean all the groups involved. The pharma sponsors developing therapies,
Right.
the regulatory bodies like the EMA in Europe, the FDA here in the States. Beyond them, the payers who decide on insurance coverage, even the individual study teams collaborating within a single trial.
Okay, lots of different groups.
All these diverse groups frequently interpret the same terms differently. Or, conversely, they might use entirely different non-standardized terms for the very same concept.
So it's a mess.
It leads to a veritable babble of interpretations. Communication just breaks down before it even truly begins, hindering progress at a really fundamental level.
Wow.
And the subgroup's paper doesn't shy away from drilling down into concrete examples of this linguistic muddle. It gives vivid illustrations of the real-world impact.
Like what? What are some examples?
Well, they point out how a seemingly straightforward term like monitoring, which most of us would casually define as just watching something or keeping tabs.
Seems simple enough.
Right. But it's interpreted with crucial differences by regulators like the EMA and FDA.
Okay, how so?
For a sponsor running a global clinical trial, this disparity can lead to immense cross-regional disagreements. Imagine one regulatory body views monitoring with a digital wearable as purely observational data collection, maybe just gathering passive data on activity or sleep. No active patient input.
Right, just collecting data in the background.
Exactly. Meanwhile, another agency interprets monitoring as a more active, regulated process. Maybe it implies patient feedback or alerts or even a specific intervention threshold based on the data.
Okay, a much more involved process.
Totally different implications. So the data collected under that seemingly simple umbrella term, monitoring, could be treated very differently in terms of regulatory requirements, the level of validation needed.
So a sponsor designs a study based on the FDA's view.
Only to find the EMA views the data completely differently, says it's insufficient or needs entirely different validation because their definition implies something else.
Wow, that sounds like a nightmare for global trials.
It directly translates to costly delays, significant redesigns, resubmissions. It fundamentally hinders the global approval pathway.
Okay, so monitoring is a big one. What else? You mentioned the E prefix earlier.
Yes, the humble E prefix versus the term digital when discussing clinical outcome assessments, or COAs.
Seems so innocuous, just a tiny letter, but the paper argues it's a huge source of confusion. How can that matter so much?
That's an excellent question, and it really gets to the heart of the confusion. The distinction here is absolutely critical for anyone navigating this regulatory landscape. As we touched on, eCOA denotes a conversion.
Conversion.
Yes. It's taking a traditional, often paper-based clinical outcome assessment like a patient's symptom diary or a quality of life questionnaire and simply digitizing it.
Okay, putting a paper form onto a tablet.
Essentially, yes. The underlying measure itself isn't fundamentally new, it's just collected electronically. The primary validation focus for an eCOA is mainly about demonstrating that the electronic version is equivalent to the paper one.
Making sure it works the same way electronically.
Right. That the patient experience is consistent, no new errors are introduced by the digital format. It's about ensuring fidelity to an established measure.
Got it. So what about digital COA?
A digital COA, or digital measure, however, represents something fundamentally different. It often involves a novel way of measuring a health outcome.
Something you couldn't do on paper.
Exactly, something that wasn't feasible or practical with traditional methods. These typically collect data continuously and passively through a sensor.
Like tracking gait speed with a phone.
Precisely. Tracking gait speed via accelerometers in a smartphone, measuring sleep architecture using a smart ring, assessing vocal tremor from a recorded speech sample, things like that.
Okay, totally new kinds of data.
Because these are novel metrics, they demand a much deeper, often de novo from scratch validation process.
More rigorous.
Much more rigorous. It's not just about equivalency. It involves demonstrating the digital measure is reliable, consistently sensitive to changes in a patient's condition, and truly captures what it intends to measure in a clinically meaningful way.
So proving the new measurement actually works and is useful.
Exactly. This requires extensive analytical validation, often involving complex algorithms, real-world data. It's a far more involved and expensive undertaking than just digitizing an existing form.
I can see that.
So conflating these two terms, treating a simple e-diary like a complex, novel digital biomarker that can lead to either insufficient validation for the truly novel digital measure.
Which is risky.
Very risky. Or an overly burdensome and unnecessary validation process for simple eCOAs.
Which wastes time and money.
Both outcomes waste precious resources, delay innovation, and risk compromising data integrity. It's like treating a word processor like a supercomputer just because both use electricity. The nature and requirements are vastly different.
That makes sense. Okay, and then we have raw data. That sounds incredibly straightforward, doesn't it?
You'd think so.
Data, untouched, straight from the source, no processing whatsoever. But the paper suggests it's a minefield of misunderstanding. How can something so basic be so ambiguous, especially in a field obsessed with data precision?
What's truly fascinating here, and a critical insight from the paper, is how much context utterly changes the definition of raw data.
Context is everything.
Absolutely. For a sophisticated digital sensor, raw data could genuinely mean the very electrical impulses, the waveforms, the unprocessed light signals recorded before any embedded algorithms touch them.
Okay, like the pure signal from the hardware.
Exactly. The raw voltage from an accelerometer, the raw light absorption from a PPG sensor for heart rate, truly raw.
Right.
However, if you're speaking with a clinical researcher, a biostatistician, or even a different team in the same company, their understanding of raw data might be the already processed output from those signals.
So like the calculated steps per minute or the heart rate number.
Precisely. A heart rate value that's already been derived through filtering and beat detection algorithms or sleep stages inferred from those raw physiological signals, it's already been interpreted to some degree.
I see the problem. Different people mean different things by raw.
And this blurred definition fundamentally confuses analysis standards. It creates significant compliance and auditability challenges.
How so?
Well, imagine an analytics team thinks they're working with raw data that's already been partly processed by the device's firmware.
Okay.
But then a regulatory body, during an audit, expects to see the truly untouched, unprocessed sensor signals for deeper scrutiny of the algorithm used.
Gate misalignment.
Massive misalignment. This impacts everything. How data is stored, what processing steps are documented, what algorithms are applied when, and crucially, how the data's integrity, validity, and transparency can be assessed.
You can't trace it back properly.
Exactly. It directly impacts the replicability of results. It can lead to serious questions about the reliability of the evidence presented for a drug or therapy. This ambiguity can stall regulatory review, force costly reprocessing of data,
Or even lead to rejection.
if the data trail isn't crystal clear and auditable from its absolute rawest form.
Wow. Okay, so if these seemingly small linguistic issues aren't sorted, if we continue in this sort of linguistic Wild West, what's the tangible real-world cost? It sounds huge.
Absolutely. The ripple effects are profound and incredibly costly, both financially and, more importantly, in delaying patient access to treatments.
Right, the human cost.
The paper clearly articulates these severe consequences, draws a stark picture. First, we end up with misaligned protocols.
Misaligned protocols, like the study plans.
Exactly. Imagine a pharma sponsor designing a global phase 3 trial for a new Alzheimer's drug. They plan to use a digital measure from a wearable to track gait speed as a key endpoint.
Okay, Seems reasonable.
But due to differing interpretations of monitoring or digital measure across regions, their carefully crafted protocol, which might have taken a year and millions to develop, is deemed insufficient in Europe while acceptable in the US.
Oh, no.
This forces a costly, time-consuming redesign, potentially losing 2 years of progress, tens of millions in budget.
Just because of word definitions.
Just because of word definitions. And this leads directly to massive trial inefficiencies. When clarity is absent, time and resources are constantly wasted clarifying definitions, doing redundant work.
Or even scrapping parts of studies?
Or even needing to entirely scrap and redo parts of studies because of fundamental misunderstandings. This means longer drug development timelines, increased operational costs, missed opportunities.
Okay, inefficiencies. What else?
Furthermore, there are significant validation deficits.
Meaning the proof that the measurement works isn't good enough.
Exactly. Situations where the crucial processes that prove a digital measure is accurate, reliable, clinically meaningful, those processes are either insufficient or misapplied because the underlying terms were never clearly defined.
So if a new digital COA is presented to a regulator,
without adequate, appropriately targeted validation, maybe because it was mistakenly treated like a simpler eCOA, confidence in the data just erodes.
Understandable.
And the most critical, devastating consequence is potentially failing agencies, meaning failing to gain regulatory approval.
The ultimate roadblock.
Imagine investing hundreds of millions, even billions, in a new drug program, relying on these promising digital endpoints, only for it to be delayed or ultimately rejected by regulators.
All because of definition.
Because of definitional disagreements or because data integrity was questioned due to lack of clarity around raw data. It's a colossal waste of time, money, scientific effort.
And a huge obstacle for patients.
A huge obstacle to bringing important new therapies to patients who desperately need them. They're stuck in limbo because of this Tower of Babel effect.
Okay, so we've clearly established the problem, this widespread linguistic Wild West, the severe risks it poses. It's pretty bleak.
It highlights the urgency, yeah.
Now, recognizing this critical need, the EFPIA subgroup stepped in, not just to identify the problem, but to provide a foundational, actionable solution, a harmonized framework of key definitions.
Right, moving towards a solution.
They've laid out what they believe are the essential terms that need to be clearly and consistently understood. And this isn't about creating new terms in a vacuum, is it? It's about integrating existing wisdom.
Precisely. That's a key point. The core recommendation isn't to reinvent the wheel. That would be counterproductive given everything already out there.
Right, build on what works.
Instead, it's to actively and broadly adopt their standardized lexicon, which is itself a synthesis of existing authoritative frameworks. It shows a really collaborative, consensus-driven approach.
So they looked at what was already established.
Exactly. Their proposed lexicon consciously references and meticulously builds upon an impressive array of established resources. Foundational references like the FDA and NIH Best Glossary.
A big one.
A cornerstone for defining biomarkers and clinical outcomes. They also draw heavily from the European Medicines Agencies, the EMA's detailed Q&A documents on digital methodologies.
So cover the European perspective too.
Absolutely crucial. Furthermore, they align with the CPATH SOA biomarker frameworks and the Clinical Trials Transformation Initiative, CTTI, Digital Endpoint Guidance.
CTTI, right.
Alongside other prominent consortium and regulatory vocabulary sets. This comprehensive cross-referencing approach ensures the proposed lexicon isn't just an arbitrary list.
It's grounded.
It's a robust, globally relevant set of definitions that all stakeholders, developers, regulators, researchers can trust and readily integrate. By consciously aligning with these established bodies, EFPIA aims for broad global acceptance.
Making it easier for everyone to adopt a common language.
Without feeling forced into an entirely new system, it's about bridging existing islands of knowledge into a unified continent, essentially.
It's one thing to have a dictionary, though, even a really well-thought-out, harmonized one. But it's another entirely to actually use it consistently.
True. Adoption is key.
How does the paper suggest these definitions become part of the everyday operational fabric of clinical trials? How do they get operationalized across all the documents, the processes, the actual conduct of studies?
This raises an absolutely critical question. How do you move from theory to practice? How do you ensure these definitions are consistently applied?
Right, the practical steps.
The paper emphasizes that these definitions must be operationalized across all trial documents and internal processes. It's not just a suggestion, it's really a mandate. Embed clarity into the very fabric of trial execution.
From the start.
From the earliest planning stages right through to final reporting and publication. For example, within every single study protocol, the blueprint for the trial, and in all standard operating procedures, SOPs, that guide how things are done, as well as in all analytical plans that dictate how data will be interpreted.
All those core documents.
In all of them, it's crucial to explicitly specify whether a term refers to a digital endpoint, the specific outcome variable for stats, or merely a digital physical measure transcript. Maybe a raw or minimally processed data output that feeds into a measure but isn't the endpoint itself.
Making that distinction clear every time.
Every single time. Furthermore, anytime a term like digital measure, digital endpoint, or digital biomarker is used, its precise definition as per the Harmonized lexicon must be explicitly stated and referenced.
No room for ambiguity.
Absolutely none. Imagine the clarity that brings when every member of the study team, every internal reviewer, every CRO partner, every regulator understands exactly what's being measured, how, and how it will be analyzed.
Consistency across the board.
This level of explicit clarity prevents misinterpretations before they can even arise. It fosters unprecedented consistency. It's about codifying clarity, ensuring monitoring means the same thing to the team in Mumbai as it does to the team in Boston.
A fundamental shift from assumption to precision.
Exactly.
So it's clear this isn't just a conversation for scientists or statisticians, that it's much broader, multidisciplinary.
Absolutely. The paper strongly advocates for early and broad stakeholder alignment, underscoring that this isn't just about scientific consensus, but building shared understanding across all functions in drug development.
All functions, like who?
It means engaging genuinely multidisciplinary teams from the absolute outset. Not just the clinical and scientific experts, but critically, legal teams to ensure compliance with complex global data privacy rules, IP rights, right from the ground up.
Legal, right. Important early on.
Essential.
Okay.
Statistical experts, not just for analysis, but to define precisely how endpoints will be analyzed, what rigor is required. Regulatory affairs professionals involved early to strategically guide the approval pathway in different regions.
That makes sense. Anyone else?
Crucially, the paper also highlights the often overlooked but immense importance of including patients themselves or patient advocacy groups.
Ah, the patient perspective.
Yes. Involving patients ensures that the digital endpoints chosen are actually meaningful to those living with the condition, reflecting outcomes that truly matter to their daily lives, not just things that are technically measurable.
Those relevant to them.
Exactly. This proactive, comprehensive engagement, bringing diverse perspectives to the table long before huge investments are made, is key to preventing costly misinterpretations later.
Building that shared understanding from the start.
It builds a robust foundation of shared commitment, understanding, trust. It helps withstand the complexities of modern drug development. Without this early buy-in, you risk building a beautiful machine that no one agrees on how to operate.
Good point. And for something as inherently global as drug development, this isn't just about one country or one regulatory body, is it?
Not at all.
The language needs to be universally understood and accepted worldwide to truly unlock the potential.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, achieving regulatory qualification for a digital endpoint in one region means very little if the terminology isn't understood and accepted in another major market.
Right, you need global acceptance.
Therefore, the paper vehemently stresses the strategic need for global regulatory alignment and a cohesive global strategy. Meaning consistently using the precise lexicon from EFPIA in all digital drug therapy, or DDT qualification proposals. Those are the formal submissions asking regulators for official recognition of a new digital tool.
Okay, and the official paperwork.
Yes. And when liaising with major regulators like FDA or EMA, or with health technology assessment bodies, HTAs, in various countries.
The groups that assess value for reimbursement.
Exactly. This standardized language must be employed unequivocally and precisely in all those communications.
Why is that so critical?
This proactive clarification prevents miscommunication. It significantly reduces the likelihood of disparate interpretations across jurisdictions. And crucially, it streamlines the entire global approval process.
Makes it smoother.
It's about building a consistent, clear, universally understood pathway for digital endpoints to gain both regulatory acceptance and commercial integration into clinical practice worldwide.
Avoids that bureaucratic nightmare you mentioned.
Exactly. Imagine a company trying to get approval globally. If their definition of activity monitoring is understood differently in the US, Europe, Asia, It's endless clarifications, delays.
So the common lexicon cuts through that red tape.
It helps cut through it, ensuring innovation isn't tragically hindered by inconsistent definitions, allowing patients globally to benefit sooner. It's about building bridges of understanding, not walls of jargon.
Okay, so after all this effort for linguistic precision in what might seem like a very niche area, what's the grand vision here? What's the ultimate strategic impact this harmonized language aims for?
The ultimate goal, the profound strategic impact, is multifaceted but really focused on two paramount outcomes: efficiency and trust.
Efficiency and trust.
Okay, shared definitions directly reduce regulatory friction,
Right.
less back and forth with agencies, fewer clarification requests, smoother, faster interaction.
Saves time and hassle.
It also significantly minimizes rework within companies, saving immense time, labor, money that would otherwise be spent correcting errors born from misunderstanding.
Right. Avoids wasted effort.
Fundamentally, it fosters evidence standardization, ensuring data collected across different studies, different groups, different companies can be reliably compared, aggregated, understood.
Building a stronger evidence base overall.
A far more robust, coherent, trustworthy body of scientific evidence for digital health interventions. All of this collectively translates into significantly faster, more efficient development pathways.
Which gets treatments to patients sooner.
Critical for patients waiting. And beyond efficiency, transparent language directly supports patient trust and comprehension.
How so?
When the public and patients clearly understand what's being measured, how it's measured, why it matters for their health, it builds essential confidence in these new, often complex digital health technologies.
Fostering broader acceptance.
Exactly. Broader acceptance and adoption in real-world care. It's about moving from ambiguity to clarity, from friction to flow, and ultimately from potential to tangible patient benefit.
It truly sounds like this isn't just about one study or one drug then. It's about laying a crucial foundation for all future digital health research.
Exactly right.
And ensuring these innovations can scale globally.
Yes. This harmonization of language promotes profound scalability and replicability across trials, across regions, across different therapeutic areas.
Why is that so important?
Well, consider the alternative. If every research group, every institution, every company uses its own idiosyncratic definitions, its own nomenclature, its own validation methods,
It's impossible to compare anything.
virtually impossible to compare results across studies or to robustly scale successful methodologies globally. How can you compare a drug's impact on mobility if one study measures steps per day with one definition and another uses a different algorithm and threshold?
You can't pool the data meaningfully.
Right. Standardized language, however, allows studies to be replicated reliably. Results can be accurately compared across different populations or diseases, and ultimately it accelerates the broader adoption and regulatory payer acceptance of these incredibly valuable digital tools into mainstream healthcare.
So it moves it from niche to mainstream.
It's about creating that common currency of understanding that enables exponential growth and impact, transforming fragmented innovations into a cohesive, impactful, globally integrated system.
Making digital endpoints a trusted, indispensable part of research and care.
That's the goal, a systematic approach, not just one-off innovations.
So for you, our listener, what does this all mean at the end of the day? All this talk about definitions, frameworks.
Yeah.
It ultimately boils down to getting better, more relevant treatments to people faster and more reliably, doesn't it?
This raises that important question. Why do we invest so much in this seemingly dry, detailed work?
Yeah, why all the fuss about words?
The conclusion of the paper powerfully brings it back to the human element, the ultimate purpose. This meticulous effort directly enables the efficient and trustworthy development of digital endpoints that deliver truly meaningful, patient-centered results.
Meaningful to patients.
Yes. It ensures that when we measure something with a digital tool, a wearable, a sensor, an app, it truly reflects what matters most to patients.
Are their symptoms genuinely improving?
Is their physical function enhanced in a way that impacts their daily life? Is their quality of life measurably better?
The things that really count.
This precision in language helps ensure data integrity, facilitates robust validation, smooths regulatory qualification, and global acceptance. It's about fulfilling the immense promise of digital health in a way that genuinely improves lives.
Making sure innovation translates into real benefits.
Real, tangible benefits for individuals and public health globally. It's about making sure the future of medicine, powered by digital data, is built on a foundation of absolute clarity and trust.
We've taken a deep dive into the surprisingly complex yet profoundly important world of digital endpoint terminology. Discovering how clarity isn't just a preference, but an absolute necessity for the future of health innovation.
It really is fundamental.
From battling that linguistic SOG that can stall drug development to building a common, harmonized dictionary, the dedicated work of the EFPIA subgroup represents a critical foundational step towards a more efficient, trustworthy, and ultimately more patient-centric digital health landscape. Yeah.
You know, this pursuit of precise language, especially in a field evolving as fast as digital endpoints, it really highlights a broader, maybe more profound challenge, doesn't it?
How so?
Well, in an increasingly digital world where data is collected constantly, where complex algorithms make inferences impacting everything from health to finance, where human-machine interaction is ubiquitous.
Right, data is everywhere.
How does our ability to accurately define and agree upon what that data truly represents, and importantly, what it means, how does that shape our collective future?
Yeah.
Even beyond medical research.
That's a big question.
Is this quest for linguistic clarity in digital health maybe a model for managing complexity and ensuring trust in other rapidly evolving fields? Or even just for navigating the nuances of digital communication in our everyday lives?
That's fascinating. Is clarity the key to managing complexity everywhere?
It's a reminder, I think, that even in the most technologically advanced spaces, our oldest human tool language remains absolutely fundamental.
It's certainly food for thought, isn't it? As technology continues to move faster than our vocabulary, the need for shared understanding becomes more critical than ever. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.